In recent times, the world has witnessed shifts in the environment and climatic landscape. The global environmental phenomenon has seen unprecedented changes in climate that are unfavorable and are negatively affecting the globe. Storms, tsunamis, flooding, heat waves, droughts, increasing instances of cold in great proportions, among others, have become the order of the day around the world. Like many developing countries, Zambia has been adversely affected by climate change. The country has been experiencing unpredictable weather patterns manifesting in prolonged dry spells, rising temperatures, drought, and uneven rainfall, among others. Government is concerned with a precarious climate situation, and President Edgar Lungu shares his thoughts with the country's development partners on the country's plan to deal with climate change.
Zambia has faced enormous challenges due to the changing and unpredictable weather patterns as a result of climate change. As a signatory to the Paris Agreement, our country is committed to working with all your governments and various organizations at multilateral level in our quest to meet the challenges caused by climate change. The collaboration with all of you will guarantee commitment to our respective roles towards addressing this global challenge with the ultimate objective of leaving behind a sustainable planet for future generations.
These climate changes and conditions are negatively impacting various sectors, among them agriculture and energy. Zambia's agriculture is primarily rain-fed, and the country is presently experiencing unpredictable weather patterns manifesting in prolonged dry spells, rising temperatures, drought, uneven rainfall, and crop failures in the majority of the country's ecological regions. About 80% of Zambia's rural population is estimated to be involved in agrarian activities that are churning out reduced crop yields due to climate change. According to agriculture experts, the rising effects of climate change have increased vulnerabilities of farmers in 6 provinces of Zambia due to increasing variability of rainfall and drought, which have a direct impact on agricultural production and food security.
And what then do we need to do for us to move forward? We need to strengthen generation, interpretation, and of climate and data for us to be able to plan for climate risk. We will have a strengthened capacity of farmers who are able to plan for and implement climate resilient practices. Then the second one will be enhanced food security, including nutrition of the targeted population in the face of climate change and variability. The third one will be the strengthened livelihoods and income generation of targeted populations able to withstand climate-related impacts.
Sustainable generation of electricity in the country is also at risk following increasing cases of uneven rainfall and drought.
So for us as Ministry of Energy, I think if this goes through, I think it will be a milestone and it will help us with all these reforms that we are undertaking in order to diversify from hydro to other technologies. You may be aware what happened in 2015, where because of the climate change, we had a deficit of about 1,000 megawatts. And as a result, we were having load shedding of up to even 8 hours.
It is feared that the continuous role of climate change will continue to negatively impact the country's socio-economic development.
I think it was realized by the developing countries that they had done immense damage to the climate, and of course the repercussions were being felt all over. And you may agree with you that in terms of reversing the variabilities of climate change, I think there are advantages, or there are greater opportunities in the developing countries to multidimensional. It's multifaceted, and in most cases there's a danger of associating climate change with only one pillar, which is the environment, isn't it? But you realize that climate change really does affect the economic pillar, it does affect the social pillar, and of course the one that we all are aware about is the environment, because you can actually extrapolate the effects of climate change on the environment.
Government has since developed strategies to mitigate the impact of climate change on national development in line with the 7th National Development Plan. The Ministry of National Development Planning created the National Designated Authority, NDA, to coordinate climate change programs and financing. As the designated country office for climate change, the NDA is the main liaison of the country to the Green Climate Fund.
The main liaison with the Green Climate Fund. Now, perhaps the starting point is the policy environment. As you are aware, there was no climate change policy in Zambia. I think under the ministry, a process was put in place when the ministry was put up to pick up from where others left, to put up a climate change policy, because that is what really defined the space in terms of institutional mandates. And from there, the policy was approved in 2016. And as you are aware, for you to be well connected to the global processes, you need to have a clear policy in place. And when this was put in place, it was clear on which direction we were going to take.
The Green Climate Fund was established in 2010 within the framework of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to significantly contribute to combat climate change and promote paradigm shifts and resilient development pathways. The GCF is the world's largest financier of climate change programs and largely draws resources from the world's developed nations, who are primarily viewed as being responsible for the damage to the ozone layer and the world's climate. Through the NDA, government developed 2 proposals in the agriculture and energy sectors to help respond to the effects of climate change in the country. The 2 projects cost about 281 million United States dollars. In agriculture, the project will assist nearly 1 million smallholder farmers across the various ecological regions of the country to adapt to climate change and improve their livelihoods. The energy sector project seeks to make 300,000 people in rural areas across the country access electricity. Selecting and crafting the 2 projects was not an easy task. The projects committee under the Ministry of National Development Planning says it received 178 proposals and only 8 met the local criteria for consideration and submission to the GCF.
I think with regard to all the proposals that we've passed on as Zambia to the GCF, quality has not been an issue. But yes, within ourselves, quality is an issue. We've received over 178 proposals, which we've looked at, which we've vetted, which we've graded, and we've only recommended 8 to come to the GCF. But what we are trying to do as a country is that we are trying to develop a resource center, because some of the projects, although the quality is poor, the ideas which are presented in there are very good for financing. So in order to do that, we are going to create a resource center and have resource persons that will help a good number of Zambians who have very good project proposals, but perhaps the ability to write is not there, so that they help to improve the quality of the proposals. So we are very confident that in the future, we shall be recommending much more proposals to the GCF whose quality meets the expectations of the GCF board.
However, accessing finance to fund climate change interventions is a daunting task facing many developing countries desiring to address rising effects on their environment and communities. Government is aware of the strain on the national budget, and hence exploring alternative financing is cardinal in balancing financing of national development targets and mitigating climate change.
Now, within the plan, the financing architecture is that we are first focusing on the ongoing projects, most of which have been financed. But there are also financing gaps, and we are picking those where there are gaps in financing, where we cannot obtain financing from the budget, ordinary budget support, in-country revenues, and other grants to the GCF, so that we can start reducing the financing gap. So what this means is that where we had financing gap, especially for reducing poverty and vulnerabilities in rural communities, we're going to have financing to support, for instance, smallholder farmers, engage in agricultural practices that will enable them to be more resilient to shocks associated with the vagaries of the weather. So which basically means that we're going to enhance production and productivity within those communities, and it's going to guarantee availability of food within the project lifespan and within the lifespan of the 7th National Development Plan.
Armed with the 2 projects, government approached the GCF to fund its 2 climate resiliency projects. From the 27th of February to the 1st of March 2018, the GCF held its 19th board meeting in Seoul, South Korea, to consider, among others, proposals for funding. South Korea is no ordinary country. Officially known as the Republic of Korea, it is located in the southern part of the Korean Peninsula, which neighbors China to the west, Japan to the east, and North Korea to the north. Though South Korea is 7 times smaller than Zambia, it is one of the most densely populated countries in the world, with a population of about 51 million people. It is also referred to as the Miracle on the Han River. Its rapid development and transformation from a poor nation in 1961 into a leading economy and ICT leader in the world within 1 generation leap has stunned economists and development experts. It is here in South Korea where the Green Climate Fund is located, in particular at the G Tower in the district of Sondo, Incheon City. The Zambian delegation to the GCF meeting, led by Development Planning Permanent Secretary, accompanied by his energy counterpart and technocrats, paid a courtesy call on the Zambian mission in Seoul.
Your Excellency, it hasn't been an easy job to just analyze the proposals and getting the best that we feel could make the grade.
and we have had guidelines and support from the GCF in terms of the things to check out for how the analysis should be done, the rules of engagement, the rules of procedure, and stuff like that. And so far, 4 project proposals were approved by the government of the Republic of Zambia. 2 of those will be discussed in this session, and we are hoping that 2 more, if not 3, will be discussed in the next board meeting.
And Zambia's ambassador to South Korea said Zambia can learn a lot from the Asian country's rapid development.
South Korea, there are a lot of opportunities in terms of ODA, investment, cooperation, but it is not sitting there waiting. We need to strategize. We need to be aggressive. We need to be able to present ourselves as, a country and people who can access this and use it very well. 11th in the world, and they are in a lot of spheres. They are number 1 in the world, like ICT. South Korea is first in the world. In terms of electronics, they're number 1. In terms of industries like petroleum, they're number 1 in the world. And they are now, I think you've heard of this group, the Next 11. They're a member now of the Next 11 that would dominate world economies in the 21st century. So they have really skyrocketed, and they've done this in a generation. And I think the whole world is acknowledging. In fact, most of the leaders that come here acknowledge the big steps Korea have done. And it is so significant that it's been termed the miracle on the Han River. What can we learn? What can we take home? What can we take home? I think this is not the time to be, especially here, to be defending ourselves, or it's a time to say, what can we learn? What can we see?
Deliberations and considerations for funding of proposals were no straws in the park. GCF board members dissected the merits of proposals to the anguish and joy of some of these 140 membership whose proposals for funding were either rejected or approved respectively. The Zambian team watched with keen interest the deliberations on the country's first ever full-fledged project proposals for funding from the GCF.
2. Strengthening climate resilience of agricultural livelihoods in agroecological regions 1 and 2 in Zambia. The country is Zambia. The accredited entity is the United Nations Development Program. Zambia is experiencing increased rainfall variability and frequency of droughts, and rainfalls are expected to be more erratic, less frequent, and more intense. A general decline in precipitation affects the length of the growing season and reduces agricultural productivity, which in turn impact food security and livelihoods of smallholder farmers. The project aims to increase climate resilience and adaptive capacity of smallholder farmers in agroecological regions 1 and 2 of Zambia by taking a value chain approach, addressing the risks posed across all key stages, including planning, inputs, production, and post-production.
I take it we can approve this funding proposal? Yes, it's so decided.
The clinching of the funding for Zambia, amounting to 84.5 million United States dollars, was a breakthrough moment for accessing alternative funds to address climate-affected socio-economic activities in the country.
Kids that are not able to study during the night will be able to study, right? The small manufacturers in outlying areas that are not able to produce goods and services will have access to electricity, and their production will increase. So this basically also will have an impact on enhancing human development. It's also going to have an impact on reducing poverty. it will also have an impact for those that are producing and they're able to use simple irrigation equipment that are driven by power, be able to produce more food and also contribute to economic diversification and job creation. So the most important thing is we're trying to reduce the level of inequalities between rural and urban areas.
The Ministry of Energy is thrilled with the acquisition of the funds, as the project is expected to help improve access to electricity in rural areas.
Of the rural population have access to electricity. Now with this, and it's a feeding program where we feed into the main grid, I think it will go a long way in ensuring that more rural population have access to electricity. Secondly, we have these new created districts. I think they also be able to benefit from this. And I think for us in the energy sector, this is one of the programs that we have been very actively been trying to get resources so that we can diversify, so that we don't only depend on hydro electricity.
The Zambian technocrats are already engaging development cooperation partners such as the African Development Bank and the United Nations Development Programme on best practices of implementing the projects, as well as exploring further projects for funding consideration. In the eyes of the Zambian mission in Seoul, GCF's approval of funds to Zambia is no mean achievement. At the 19th board meeting, Zambia got the lion's share of the $165 million United States dollars GCF allocated to Africa to finance climate-related projects. Namibia, Rwanda, Burkina Faso, and the trio of Uganda, Ghana, and Nigeria were the other African countries that accessed the GCF funds.
I acknowledge the fact that both our projects were approved, which is unprecedented, because in terms of magnitude of funds, we're talking in excess of $200 million, which is coming, to be used back home. So this is not a small feat, and for me, I think this is a point to acknowledge and offer congratulations to the team. I think job well done for the team. Yes.
The approval of GCF funding for Zambia's climate resiliency projects may well be the tonic and panacea the country needs to respond to climate change and implement development pathways in line with the 7th National Development Plan.